Hey there, and welcome back to my channel. So today marks day one of this week-long series I've decided to do, kind of like viewer suggests or subscriber suggests. I'm not sure what I'm going to end up calling it, but here we are. This is day one, and every day this week I'm going to be doing a video that one of you have suggested in the comments of one of my videos. So I've already picked out the 5 videos that I'm going to do, and I will let you know who requested it, so keep an eye out for that. Maybe your pick got suggested. But anyways, I just really decided I would kind of devote a full week to this because I've definitely done, like, taken your guys' advice or suggestions in the past before, but they've been sprinkled here and there, and recently I got a whole bunch of ideas from you guys, and they were all really, really good ones that I was kind of thinking about or that I'd never thought about. So here we are. So as I said, this is day one. As you can see from the title, I am doing an all about tea fragrances video, and this was suggested by Steph Bunny. So I hope you're watching, and thank you so much for your support and for subscribing and for keeping up with me. So we will get into the video. I have 8 fragrances to actually share with you guys about, to talk about tea and fragrances. This video is gonna be chatty. I'm gonna show a lot, but I am gonna delve into more of the nitty gritty and really talk about it in depth, a lot more than I usually do, because whenever I do, those of you who like my more in-depth videos or that, you know, really comment on how much of a huge fan of fragrance I am and the love of fragrance really seem to like it. So I of course love it as well, and I'm happy to get into that. I also noticed as I was compiling my 8 that there are 4 tea fragrances that are very spring summer, and there's 4 that are a lot more fall winter. You can definitely wear all of these year round if you want, just like with any fragrance, but it just happened to work out that I feel like 4 are more typically spring summer and 4 are more typically fall winter. But I will get into each one, and we will start with the spring summer just because it's still, thankfully it's still summer here. So the first one I will talk about is probably one of my more recent additions, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one because I've really talked about this one enough, I feel, on my channel, and it's Green Tea Mimosa by Elizabeth Arden. This is part of that very large collection of green tea something fragrances that Elizabeth Arden did, and as I've mentioned, if you haven't subscribed already, do subscribe. You will have seen me talk about the fact that I was never really into collecting these particular fragrances in this range until I saw the Mimosa one, because I've really gone through a huge love of Mimosa this year actually, and this one intrigued me, so I'm happy to have picked it up. I will say this is a very, very easy way to dip your toes into tea fragrances, to dip your toe into green tea fragrances, and to see if you're really into them. I'm a huge lover. I don't mind when it gets deep and dark and very wet tea leaf smelling personally, but it's not a note that is for everyone, just like, you know, pretty much every note. So I feel like this is a really safe way to explore tea because it's not extremely strong. Even though it's called Green Tea Mimosa, it's not very strong within the fragrance itself. You definitely get like a light herbal, I wouldn't even say super green tea, but definitely not matcha by any means, but like a very fruity tea, an herbal tea, and the mimosa in this is quite soft as well. It adds a touch of fuzziness to it, which is what I love about mimosa, but it's not extremely strong. It's not overpowering. I find that it just, yeah, it's just a little dash. In general, it's kind of fruity and definitely summery. I think out of all of the fragrances I'm going to talk about, this is the most spring summer centric of my tea fragrances. You can wear it in fall winter. Personally, for me, I don't really see myself reaching for this in the colder weather unless it's one of those days where you just want to remember summer and you're just like in the depth of winter. If you live somewhere cold, you know what I mean. But in general, this is just such a spring, summer, daytime, beachy, but without being in any way sunscreen or suntan lotion type scent that it just screams summer to me personally. It's a really, really nice one, but I think it's also the most generic of the tea smelling fragrances, which is why I think it's also the easiest one to kind of step into, and the one that's the least unique also. And I feel like this and maybe one other is the one where the tea is the least prominent as well. Again, making it easier to wear if you're just discovering tea, if you're just kind of seeing whether or not you're truly interested in kind of delving in that area, because it's not like it's rose or peony or even musk, which is in a whole bunch of fragrances. Tea, and especially, you know, the stronger, darker, black or richer teas it's not a note that it's in, you know, as many fragrances or as widely used as something floral. So that is my first pick, green tea mimosa. For beginner tea fragrance lover, that is what I'd suggest from my collection. So then we get into number 2, and for number 2, again, this is a fragrance that is relatively new to my collection. I know haul-wise, I've just recently hauled it, but that video is a bit old and pre-filmed, so I've actually had a good time playing around with this, and I've worn it quite often actually. So this is Eau Thé Bleu, and it's by Bulgari. That's the Eau Parfumée range, where they had Eau Thé Blanc, Rouge, Vert, maybe Noir, I'm not sure, but I think there was 4 or 5, and I got the Bleu, and it's the only one that I own. This one it's really beautiful. It's definitely immediately we're jumping into having tea be a lot more prominent. It is very, very prominent in this fragrance. It's got this interesting, I don't know, duality to it that I think I've talked about before, where you can smell both a very light, fresh, much more white tea, and then like a darker, richer, more black tea in it. And it's also got, you know, that lavender herbalness to it as well. I think it's beautiful. I think, again, it does a very, very beautiful job. It just blooms and is fresh and beautiful enough and light enough to be enjoyed in spring, summer, and I've loved wearing it. Recently, I've actually worn quite a bit. I mean, for how recently it's been added to my collection. I love the bottle. It's got frosted glass, which is always a plus in my book. And I just think it's really nice, but because it's got that duality to it of the darker kind of like wet tea leaf, black tea-ness in the background of this fragrance, I feel like I could also see this performing quite beautifully in fall, winter as well. I haven't ever owned it in colder weather, so I will come back on that, but personally, on, you know, the slightly colder days, or just kind of envisioning and wearing it to see how the heart and dry down do, I feel like because it's got that duality to it, it would actually perform kind of beautifully in both extremes of weather. It's really, really nice. I think it is for like a medium to, you know, extreme tea lover, because it's definitely prominent within the fragrance. And I just think it's unique because it can kind of transform on your skin. You can definitely get a light, airy herbalness, as I mentioned, but it's got some richness in it that you wouldn't automatically guess from the notes or even from the bottle. It seems like it's going to be a lot more fresh, and it definitely is fresh, but it's got some heart to it, and I actually think it's really beautiful. Tea also, you're not really going to get, at least in my collection, they tend to have, I don't know, like small, I don't want to say small, but like very light to medium lasting power or projection. And while this isn't a beast mode fragrance by any means, it doesn't just dissipate. This really does disappear in maybe an hour's time, but this, you're going to get a lot better lasting power. And even though it's a eau de cologne, I find that, especially on the clothing as well, it's not just going to disappear in, 20, 30 minutes and you truly can't smell anything by the end of the hour, which is a nice thing to have, but you can definitely reapply without feeling like you're choking yourself or the people around you out. So that is Eau Thé Bleu Eau Parfumée by Bulgari. Then we get to number 3, again, one that I've more recently added to my collection, but I've just been loving, and that is Teazzura from the Acqua Allegoria collection from Guerlain. This one, oh my god, it's really beautiful. I'm gonna spray this one on my arm actually. It's really nice. This is very fresh. You get a lot of citrus in the opening of this fragrance and kind of throughout, but definitely the opening. It is mouth-watering. It's very juicy. You can almost envision like bergamot or lemon, like squeezing bergamot and lemon and having that really, really fresh, fragrant citrus oils in this. And I think it's beautiful. I love citrus with tea. I think it just freshens it up. I'm a huge iced tea lover and drinker, and some of my favorites are very citrusy, sour tea, iced tea on ice. And this is exactly the feeling it kind of evokes for me. It's not like a sweet tea, southern sweet tea type feel. It's very much like a lemony, tart, herbal, I don't want to say just strictly green tea, but definitely herbal tea. And it's just so summery. This cuts through high heat on very, very hot, humid days. I've worn this recently and I find that the citrus in this is really beautiful. It's also actually really nicely done because extremely tart or very, very tart citrus fragrances can sometimes get very synthetic in that they smell like cleaning products, and this is very, very strong in its citrus and yet doesn't even come close to going into that category, or that territory, I should say. It's beautiful. I really do love this. You definitely have to like citrus. You definitely have to like herbal teas. But out of the Acqua Allegoria range, I felt like this would have been the kind of best fit for me this year, and I have not regretted it. Bottle-wise, I mean, I guess like all bottles, it's up to taste. Personally, I think the Acqua Allegoria bottles with the honeycombs and everything are really, really beautiful. They're very classy. If you just had a couple bottles, which can't relate, but if you just had a couple bottles, which I think is actually really beautiful, to just showcase on your vanity or in your bedroom, then this is one that just is very classy and, I don't know, youthful, but yet very dignified, and I really, really love it. I think it's beautiful. And again, this is one, technically the Acqua Allegoria range are not supposed to have, beast mode performance, and this doesn't, but for being a citrus and a tea fragrance, it isn't just disappearing in a half an hour, which is a big deal for me, as you guys know. So love that. So happy to have it in my collection. And again, much more spring, summer, cuts through high heat. I don't really see myself going for this, especially because of how tart it is in the fall, winter. But if you live somewhere where it's pretty much temperate or warm all year round, then this is a beautiful fragrance for that. So love that. Then the last one that I will include in my 4 that are more spring, summer is actually much more dual for me as well. And I've talked about that. I won't get into all the nitty gritty for this one because I've talked about it in depth, but I had to include Gucci pour Homme 2. And this one, yeah, I've really talked about it. I'll spray it on my hand here a lot. But I just have to talk about the fact that this is going to be really hard to find, so I don't need to get really, really into it. But if you happen to be like me, and I just have to mention it because it wasn't as delved into in some of the reviews I was reading before I picked it up, there are spices and cinnamon to this that for a lot of people might just be, in the background. But if you're like me, if your skin's chemistry is like me in any way, it's gonna really pick up on those notes, and it does for me. And at first it was like kind of not off-putting, but surprising because it really changed up the dominance of tea in this fragrance on my skin, because I was getting so much of those spices, but in retrospect, I think it's really made it so that I can easily wear this in the fall, winter as well. It's a light fragrance. It's not beast mode. It doesn't have, it has very, very low sillage or projection. It sits a lot closer to the skin, but it's beautiful. And I mean, personally, I think it's very unisex, but it is technically a men's fragrance. And I feel like it would be equally beautiful on really just everyone. I will say, as I've said so before, for me, it's just very reminiscent of the holidays. Not that I've worn it through the holidays yet because I picked it up only a couple months ago, but it's those spices. It's just very cinnamon-like, and you wouldn't necessarily think that they would pair beautifully with the tea in this, but it really does. And I find, just like with this and the herbal darker tea duality, this has a duality to it where it definitely has a fresher tea fragrance within it and tea note within it, but there is that spice to it. And depending on, you know, the day or my nose that day or whatever it may be, I can get that from like a medium or strong level within this fragrance. So I really like it. I also have noticed, you know, the more spring or summery ones for the tea fragrances usually have like a blue juice or a yellow juice, and they're a lot brighter. And as we get to the fall winters, you're gonna notice that they have darker bottles and darker juices, which is just an interesting thing to note as well. But definitely recommend Gucci Tout Pour Homme if you can get your hands on it and if you like tea/cinnamon type scents. So now we will get to the next four, and we will start with one again I've talked about a whole bunch, and it's interesting because this is the only one where tea actually isn't a note within it, but I decided to include it because personally on me, I definitely get tea in this, or at least a tea vibe, and you know, you guys can decide if it's for you. So this is Nirvana French Grey, and it's by Elizabeth and James, and this one has lavender in it, and I think maybe lavender is a note that's oftentimes or very often included with tea, and maybe it's the lavender in this and the herbalness that gives me a tea feel, but it smells so much like a beautiful kind of fall lavender tea, lavender herbal tea. And I mentioned also before the herbalness, and just something about this fragrance and its composition has a lot more of like an indie niche feel personally. And also it's very much like a rainy day fragrance. This, when I ever think about a rainy day fragrance, the first fragrance to come to mind is always French Grey. It's just very, very beautiful. You definitely have to like lavender. The lavender in this is quite strong. I think it's beautiful, and it's very unisex as well. It's not super floral or feminine leaning. And yeah, it's really, really stunning. It's insane to me that there's no tea listed in this. I mean, it's definitely, you do get that lavender herbal notes. And so maybe that's just my mind kind of putting those two together. Let me know if you guys are the same, but definitely on my skin, this smells like fall rain. It smells like, you know, I just evokes imagery of like the leaves changing, you being inside, being a little toasty, warm with like a sweater, an herbal / maybe lemon lavender tea, and just watching the rain. And I know that's oddly specific, but this is a very like mood evoking fragrance for me. And yeah, really, really like it. So that's French Grey Nirvana. Then we will get to two rather quickly of the same house. And the first one is Tokyomilk's Popose Tobacco. This one's beautiful. Every time I smell this, and I haven't worn it for a while, I just want to wear it. Like, I'm definitely going to wear this later on today, maybe even tomorrow, because there is just something delicious about this. This has tobacco, tea leaves, amberwood, and autumn apple. For me to like a fragrance with apple, it has to be special, you guys, because that's a note I really don't always enjoy. I'm just going to end up smelling like tea, but this is beautiful. This smells like smelling very fragrant, black / fruity, and probably it's the apple, like a black apple herbal tea. If you've ever had like David's tea, If you've ever been there, I'm pretty sure that's, I mean, I know it's in Canada. I don't know if it's in the States as well. It probably is. Anyways, it's a store that has loose leaf tea and you can smell them in those huge canisters. If you've ever smelled like a black tea, but it has, you know, they're more fun flavors, have like different dried fruits or confetti, like whatever it is. But this is like an herbal, black, fruity, dry leaves, if you're smelling that, and some sweet tobacco. It is stunning. The apple in this is also really, really beautiful, and I tend to really not like apple, and it just adds the most beautiful, sweet crispness to this. And the tea is just like really, really high quality black tea, which has like, yeah, just dried apples, I guess, in it. I really, really like it. It's very slightly woody, not too much, and this was one of those great finds where it was like $3.99, $4.99, something like that at Marshall's. Well worth that price, and definitely so much more. So love Popose Tobacco. The other one from Tokyomilk is Everything and Nothing, and I've talked about this as well, dark Everything and Nothing. And this one has sweet orange, pressed petals, desert moss, and tea leaves. And I've talked about this comparison before. They don't smell similar. They're both tea fragrances. They definitely smell different. But what's interesting about the tea leaves in this is that it smells like it's much more steeped. It smells like wet tea leaves. Maybe it's that moss. Yeah, that desert moss, or like it's mossy. It's a lot more wet. There's citrus, and the sweet orange is a perfect explanation of that, because I find that orange can sometimes lean more lemony and sometimes more tart and way more sweet. And this is definitely much more of like a natural orange juice. If you were just to squeeze oranges, get a very sweet orange and a beautiful steeped tea. I think it's really stunning. Again, personally, I think this is unisex and really, really beautiful to wear in fall, winter. I find that this and this, obviously, are really nice takes of how tea can be darker and richer if you combine them with things like moss or woods or tobacco, and it can be really beautiful. So yeah, love Everything and Nothing. Super, super nice. And then finally, the last one might be surprising, because for a good while, maybe like the first, I don't know, couple months, I actually didn't know that tea was a note in this, but it always kind of smelled like tea to me a little bit, especially in the opening, and I just thought it was the bergamot, but there is tea in this. So it's Flowerbomb by Viktor and Rolf. This was very, very loved for a very long time, and it's not so popular anymore. At least that's what I think, but I still have my bottle. I wear it from time to time. It's definitely floral with a name like Flowerbomb. That goes without question. But the opening is quite citrusy. I know there's bergamot in there, maybe some other citrus, and you do get herbal tea. It smells like herbal tea and bergamot and just like some citrus, basically. And I thought I was just kind of imagining it, kind of like how I imagined it with this, but it's actually listed in the notes. And I find it's a really nice way of how it can be in the opening. And I find as you're wearing it more and more, that kind of fades away a little bit. And then you get much more of that stronger, you know, florals. And as it's starting to dry down, obviously everything gets a little bit more mellow. But in general, in the opening, like right now, it's definitely got an herbal lemon bergamot opening, and I think it's really nice. And one of the things that's made me more interested in Flowerbomb is that tea note. So love that. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope, Steph Bunny, you especially enjoyed, since it was your request. And definitely let me know which one of these tea fragrances you like, which ones you're into, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.